So I'm the last speaker. If it's, what Tony and Paul said was very rich, and if you need to have a nap, I won't take it personally. But just snore quietly. It's a dad joke. But no, it's a real pleasure to be here today. And to be honest, I didn't know if I was going to be able to come here because flights regularly get canceled. And today when I was speaking to my parents, things are heating up again. So I might stay in Ireland longer than expected, let's see. But it is a real privilege to be here. And also thank you for the hospitality. And it's great also to be speaking with Paul and Tony. Before I put this red jumper, we were all matching in green. So Bethlehem, Belfast, Tony, Paul, Sam, green. It's like a band. Yeah, but the stakes are very high today. We speak about peace and justice as Palestinians. We're thinking about our families, about ourselves. The stakes are really high. And I just want to thank you for facilitating and platforming our voices. But I think what brings an extra dimension of specialness maybe to today is that we're speaking in Belfast. And as a Palestinian speaking here in Belfast, it brings a deep connection for obvious reasons. We see the flags, we know about the Shankill Road, the falls. But our histories are very uniquely intertwined. We share a similar language, the memory of colonization, the scars of partitioned lands, the struggle for self-determination, identity politics, and the complicated, often painful journey through peace processes. I'm going to mention a few examples that really connect Belfast, Ireland, and Palestine. Ronald Storrs, one of the first British military governors of Jerusalem, referred to a Jewish state in Palestine as a little loyal Jewish Ulster in a sea of potentially hostile Arabism. Another example is that the Black and Tans were deployed in Palestine to control Palestinian resistance against the British. So really our histories and current events, whether we like it or not, are intertwined. And we are in this together, and we are here today to reflect and really to be in dialogue and conversation on how to pursue justice and peace, so we may be confident in saying that love and faithfulness meet together, righteousness and peace kiss each other. I'm going to be very personal with you today to facilitate this conversation, and I also want to be very frank. Back home in Palestine today, the word peace or peace work has become a dirty word. To speak of peace work within our communities in Palestine is often to invite skepticism, suspicion, or a heavy, cynical sigh. People view it as a naive, wishful thinking at best, and a deceptive trap at worst. The same is true when we speak about justice. After decades of oppression, especially in the devastating shadow of the ongoing genocide in Gaza, talk of justice feels like a fatalistic hope, a hollow phrase spoken by outsiders, while the ground beneath our feet continues to be stolen, literally. I wonder how many people, especially those who have been wronged by faith communities, wronged by the church, can identify with this sentiment of being fatalistic about peace and justice. How many lectures have we done about peace and justice? How many articles, podcasts, films addressed to you today we've spoken about peace and justice? And where have we arrived? But why have we arrived at a place where the very concept of peace feels so alien, so untrustworthy. So I'll share my family's story to demonstrate the profound frustration with wishy-washy peace and justice. In 1939, during the British Mandate in Palestine, my grandfather lost his brother when a British military truck ran him over. That was our family's first deep taste of Western occupation and unjust loss. Less than a decade later came the Nakba. Tony referred to his family's displacement in northern Galilee. We had that in the city of Al-Lid when my grandfather was taking care of the family. My grandfather lost countless relatives. Some were imprisoned in what people call concentration camps. Some of my family were violently expelled, and some were killed. All of the land that had belonged to our family for generations was confiscated and taken away. Today, when I visit my family, my relatives, I can see literally the houses that my family used to own. And sometimes when it's the olive season, I illegally pick the olives that belong to the Israeli state, but So overnight, my family that was considered well-respected and noble became internal refugees in their own homeland. They were stripped of their property, their context, and their identity. Now, I would not judge my grandparents if they were to be consumed by bitterness. They had reasons to teach their children to hate, to despair, or to surrender to vengeance. Yet my grandparents never allowed this trauma to turn into hatred. Instead, they raised my father and uncles and aunts and us grandchildren on the core values of dignity, honor, and a steadfast hope for true peace. Turning now to my father. Inspired by this legacy of my grandparents, my father picked up this mantle of believing in peace, this dream. My father especially dedicates his life to the pursuit of justice and peace work in many of his ways. In the early 1990s, maybe for some of you here in the audience, you may remember this. I wasn't born yet. 1998, I was born. When the Oslo Accords were signed, there was a sense of anticipation that something was possible. Perhaps you remember this sense of anticipation that peace or some form of resolution is on the horizon. My parents' generation truly believed that there was a political opportunity. They invested their energy and their faith into peace work, especially the work of reconciliation. But I was born and I grew up, and as a kid I remember that anticipation slowly turning into disappointment. Year after year, the promises of the 1990s were systematically dismantled. What was called a peace process in news studios felt like a slow, painful strangulation on the ground. Homes were still being demolished, massacres happening every other year, settlements were expanding, and checkpoints were multiplying. As I grew up and currently live now in Jerusalem, a city that has a unique beauty and also a profound tension, I lived in a household, a language that was very common to me about peace and love of enemy. But as I grow older, the reality of life in Jerusalem and in Palestine generally made that belief harder and harder to sustain. The space for real peace was shrinking daily, is shrinking daily. Then came the aftermath of October 7th and the genocide that followed. What we have witnessed since then has shattered our ideas and beliefs in peace. Not only peace, but peace definitely is one of those beliefs that have been shattered. The genocide has unveiled, has exposed our inaccuracies of our diagnosis of the problem and the treatment of the sickness that we are all suffering in. It was like a final blow from this idea of a kumbaya peace reality. Today, when I look at the lives of my nephews, the next generation of my family, a whole new generation of Palestinian children, I see them growing up in an environment far more extreme, far more violent, and far more hopeless than the one I grew up in. The other day, I was with my nephews in the park, and two adults spat on my nephews who are aged 8 and 6 for speaking Arabic. My nephews are a part of a generation which more than 20,000 children in Palestine have been killed. That's their generation. So as you can see, my own trauma is generational, and the prospect that one day my nephews, or maybe my own future children, I think my aunties are gonna love that I said that, live in a peace that is a bit hard to believe in. It's difficult to come to you today and speak about peace and justice without being very frank with you. But let's move beyond my story and the story of my family. Let's look at the way generally empires operate and weaponize peace. We must be on guard. The language of peace is being actively weaponized on a daily basis. We have watched as powerful entities draft peace plans, like the political deals pushed under foreign administrations that completely bypass Palestinian rights or any form of justice. We have watched diplomats, politicians speak eloquently in the name of peace, in the name of justice, while using those exact words to justify military occupation, colonization, land theft. In our reality, many peace initiatives have not been designed to bring liberation or justice. They have been weaponized to maintain the status quo. We can see this in a lot of church initiatives for peace and reconciliation in Palestine and beyond. They ask the oppressed to be quiet, to be peaceful, to accept their oppression gracefully so that the rest of the world can feel comfortable. Peace in this corrupted form becomes nothing more than the absence of noise while injustice takes place. You mentioned the quietness, resonates a lot. It becomes a tool to pacify us rather than set us free, the full meaning of shalom. Moreover, we have seen good-intentioned peace initiatives, many from the church, fail to produce good fruit, since a lot of their approach is childish. It resembles more a Disney film rather than the peace that Christ brings us by way of the cross. So when peace work is used to pacify a population rather than dismantles the systems of injustice, it ceases to be holy. It becomes an instrument of harm. As I speak to you as a Palestinian suffering under the settler colonial project of Zionism, I recognize that I do not exist in a vacuum. I think what is happening in Palestine today is a concentrated reflection of a world unraveling at large. I think it's deeply connected to you today, whether you see it or not. We are living through a time of global horrors. Palestine is enduring a genocide, but across the globe, we see the rise of authoritarianism and fascism. We see the working class squeezed together, exploited, and pushed by systems that prioritize profit over human life. We see the rise of AI-driven warfare, turning human lives into data points on an algorithmic target list. The blaming of immigrants, especially our Muslim neighbors, for the problems that the oligarchs have created. The machinery that oppresses Palestinians is linked to the machinery that oppresses working people globally. The weaponization of peace in Palestine is part of the same playbook used worldwide to silence dissent, entrench power, and force us to accept the intolerable as normal. We've normalized so much violence through our phones and through the screens that we see. It's become normal. So where does that leave us? How do we witness to the love of Christ and imagine authentic peace and justice, as Paul and Tony mentioned today? I'm going to give you 3 points. Number 1, reject false peace. We must begin by refusing to accept the corrupted, weaponized peace offered by the powerful and the childish vision of peace that sidelines justice. True peace is not the mere absence of conflict or the quiet acceptance of ongoing harm. It is the active presence of justice. It must be built on equality, on dignity, on repentance, on restitution. We must strip away diplomatic slogans and demand a peace that brings down walls, restores stolen lands, and ensures that every person, Palestinian, Irish, British, and across the globe, can be free. We must be prophetic in our rebuke of this pie-in-the-sky form of peace. My suggestion, follow the oppressed. The oppressed can lead us in a peace that is just, that brings life, that brings liberation. Number 2, we must understand that peace is not only a personal feeling between me and you, but to work for peace means to tackle structures and systems. Peace work cannot simply be about soft dialogue or interpersonal kindness, while systematic violence continues unchecked. That is normalization. Real peace works and actively confronts in dismantling the systems and structures of oppression. We are living in a world where these systems and structures are breaking our relationship to one another. We must stand up in our communities, in our churches, in our workplaces, and speak out against the crimes and injustices in the world. I'm going to give a bit of an analogy here. If we are to want to have a peace that resembles a plant or a tree, it should be like an olive tree, steadfast to the harsh environment, to the climate, to the sun, but always produces fruit. We should avoid peace that is a plant in a greenhouse, where it can only thrive under certain conditions. But when you take the greenhouse away, it dies. Number 3, work together with all of our talents and gifts. Just this today, in having lunch or dinner at Paul and Emma's house, ideas started floating about doing conferences in different places, not only in Palestine, but Lebanon included, including the full suffering of our region, spending time together, creating alliances, managing difficult personalities is part of the work of peace. We must work together as a family. This labor cannot fall on isolated shoulders. It requires all of us bringing every gift, skill, and resource we possess into collective action. The movement of peace and justice should never be on individuals, but on the collective, on the community. We need to organize alongside the poor. We need to build international solidarity and combine our unique talents and expertise to resist injustice wherever it appears. Let us stop making the struggle about a few eloquent and talented, capable individuals, but center it on a community who exercises and celebrates the image of God in each member. Let us remember that the Lord's Prayer says, "Our daily bread, not my weekly cake." So let us build a peace that disrupts injustice. Let us build a peace that frees the oppressed. Let us build a peace that honors the dignity of every single child of God. And I hope with Paul and Tony and myself's address, we can have a conversation, a dialogue that bears good fruit of a just peace. Thank you.